In 2012, we moved into a small fisherman's cottage in Bognor Regis. From the outside, it looked normal. But every morning, the cupboards were open. Not one or two. All of them. I thought it was Chris. He thought it was me. Until we realised it wasn't either of us. I saw something standing beside the bed, and I felt it sit next to me. And when we asked it to leave, it didn't go quietly. A picture came off the wall, thrown across the room. We didn't stay much longer after that. But this is my story. Please note, our episodes are best experienced with headphones. You're listening to the Beyond Haunted UK podcast. Before we begin, if you enjoy these stories, please follow Beyond Haunted UK on all available podcast providers and across social media. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or even Spotify, over 70% of you aren't currently following, and your support generally helps the podcast grow. Our episodes may contain themes of mental illness, trauma, human suffering, or even details related to true crime. Please listen with care. This episode is a little different, because tonight I'm not telling someone else's story. Instead, I'm telling one of mine. In 2012, me and Chris moved into a fisherman's cottage in Bognor Regis on the south coast. From the outside, it looked completely ordinary. A small coastal house, white walls, bay windows, and a red front door. The kind of place you wouldn't think twice about. It felt like the start of something simple. A new place, a new chapter, and something steady. But from the very first day, something didn't quite feel right. And it's difficult to explain that feeling properly, because it wasn't fear, it wasn't even discomfort, it was something quieter than that. A subtle awareness that space didn't feel empty. It wasn't really in a way you could point to, not something you could even prove. It was just something you noticed. You just had to allow yourself to feel it. I remember walking through each room, taking everything in, trying to place that feeling, trying to understand it. But there was nothing to explain it. So I did what most people do. I just ignored it. Because when something doesn't make sense, you make it smaller and you try to rationalise it. You tell yourself it's just unfamiliarity, a new house, new sounds, and different light. And for a while that explanation was enough. And slowly, it became part of the space. Now I think it is important to add some context here, because it gives depth to what I experienced. If you've ever been on a public ghost hunt with us, you may have heard me talk about this before. From a young age, I've always felt sensitive to things. My nan was heavily involved in the spiritualist church, and she would give us crystals as gifts. It was just part of our environment growing up. So in many ways, I've always been open to that side of things. When I was younger, I remember seeing an apparition as clearly as I would see a person standing in front of me now. And recently, I spoke to my dad, who told me that as a child, I was always seeing things. Apparently, one night I was going to my bedroom because I said there was a man hanging in the doorway. Over the years, in different houses, there have always been moments, noises, footsteps, and that same feeling of unease. I've seen shoes come flying off a rack. I've seen handprints appear on my nan's organ after I just cleaned it. So for me, this wasn't entirely new. But somehow this house felt very different. The first thing we noticed in the cottage was the kitchen cupboards. Every morning we would come downstairs and all of them would be open. Not one or two. All of them, wide open. And at first it didn't really feel like anything. I assumed Chris had done it, and he assumed I had. So really, we didn't question it. We just reset them, closed them, and carried on. Until one morning I asked him, and he looked at me completely serious, and he said he thought it was me. And that moment changed everything. Because suddenly, there was no explanation left. Just that same quiet feeling. But now, it suddenly had meaning. After that, we started noticing more. Not dramatic things, not at first. Just small details and things that didn't quite sit right. The house felt different at night. Heavier, not loud, not active. Just aware. As if the silence itself had weight. I remember lying in bed some nights not fully asleep, but just aware of the room. Aware of the space around me. And aware that I didn't feel alone. We would hear the sound of someone walking up and down the stairs, even though we lived in a totally detached property. And for months, I didn't sleep properly. Then one night, I woke up properly. The room was still, Chris was asleep beside me, and standing next to him was a figure. Dark, solid and still. A mass of black lingering over him. It wasn't moving, it wasn't reacting. It was just there. I remember the way my mind tried to process it, trying to turn it into something familiar, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. But there was nothing to match it to. And then it was gone. Not fading, not walking away. Just gone. And the room felt empty again. But not the way it did before. Because once something like that happens, you don't go back to how it felt before. Another night it became physical. I felt something sit on the bed. A clear shift in weight. The mattress dipped beside me, and I actually saw it move, as if someone had just sat down. But there was no one there. And that's when things begin to change. Because it's no longer just a feeling, it's an interaction. And that forces you to question everything. Your environment, your senses, even your own mind. Because part of you needs an explanation, but another part knows exactly what you've just experienced. There were even the classic 3 knocks. Before I would come home from work, Chris would hear 3 knocks on the front door. And then minutes later, I would walk in. Whatever was there, it was aware. It was watching, and it also started to feel like it was learning. We didn't talk about it straight away. I think we were both trying to hold on to normality, because saying it out loud makes it real. But eventually, we couldn't ignore it anymore. And that night, we acknowledged it. We asked calmly for whatever was there to leave. No anger, no fear, just a very clear request. And almost immediately, something responded. A canvas picture came off the wall. It didn't fall, it was thrown across the room. And with it, a Yankee candle was pulled down too. The sound, the force, this was not accidental, it was deliberate. And there was nobody there. That canvas had been on that wall for nearly 6 months. It had been hung the day we moved in, and it had never moved once. After that, everything changed. Not in a dramatic way, but in how the house felt. Heavier, more present, as if something had been acknowledged, and no longer needed to stay hidden. That night we left. We went to the hotel I was working at and stayed there instead. Later we spoke to my in-laws, who gave us a Bible to keep in the house. And after that things seemed to settle. But something had already shifted, and we didn't stay much longer. There wasn't a single moment where we made the decision. It was quieter than that, just a shared understanding that it wasn't somewhere we could stay anymore, because it simply just didn't feel like home. And when a place loses that feeling, you notice it immediately. Looking back now, I still try to approach it with balance, because I understand how these stories sound. I understand how easily they can be explained away. Sleep, stress, suggestion, and maybe some of it can be, but not all of it. Because what we experienced felt very real, consistently real. And that's the part that stays with you. Not the fear, but the certainty in those moments. And maybe this was the moment for me where something shifted, where I started to believe that there was something beyond this world, and that maybe something continues after this life. I don't know what was in that house. I don't know if it was something external or something internal. But I do know this: some places don't feel empty, and some experiences just don't leave you, even after you've left them behind. Before you go, don't forget to follow Beyond Haunted UK on Spotify and across social media. Every follow, every share and every message really does help the community grow, and it keeps these stories alive. As usual, you'll find us wherever the strange and the spiritual meet. Thank you for listening.